Ждем, пока все подключаются. Пишите в чат, как ваше настроение и слышно ли меня хорошо. Мгм. Здравствуйте. Подождем еще минутку, пока подключатся все люди. Мгм. Прекрасно. Здравствуйте. Здравствуйте. Чудесно. Мы все здесь. А, я сейчас скажу пару слов нашему спикеру, чтобы мы поставили на перевод сразу. А, Good morning, Mr. Verlainen. Do you hear me well? Can you hear me well? Ага, окей. I can't hear you, maybe because... Денис, скажите, а вы на канале с нашим спикером? Или Дарья? Ага. We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you now. Maybe some issues with the mic. No, no. Now I hear you. Maybe because you are on the English. Can you hear me now? Oh, great. So, nice to meet you. And we just need to install the interpretation right now. So, we got two interpreters today with us. And you are now in English channel, right? All right. So, I will tell everyone so they will turn on the interpretation for now. Okay, thank you. Just give me a second. Спикер уже на английском канале, поэтому просто можно уже заходить переводчиком на английский канал. Хорошо, давайте начинать. Мы сегодня с нами Марит Верлайн, она уже зашла, у нас второй день нашей стажировки. Напоминаю, что наша тема – это искусственный интеллект в профессиональном образовании. Очень рад вас всех здесь сегодня снова видеть. И рад, что не меньше людей, чем вчера, сегодня пришло. Это значит, что есть у вас интерес к сегодняшнему дню. И сегодня нас ждет с вами три выступления. Первое будет от доктора философии в области образования взрослых, старшего научного сотрудника Финского института образовательных исследований университета Ювескюля Марит Верлайнен. Она будет говорить о том, как эволюционировала финская система профессионального образования и обучения в контексте цифровой и искусственного интеллекта, трансформации общества. Интересно будет прослушать про Финляндию, потому что мы, я думаю, многие знаем, что финская система образования одна из самых интересных в мире в целом. Далее у нас будет наш коллега из Малайзии Мухтхайзер Амар, это эксперт в области лидерства в образовании, непрерывного профессионального развития, цифровой трансформации, профессионального обучения. Будет нам рассказывать про то, как система ТИПО работает в Малайзии и как на это сегодня влияет цифровая трансформация, которая включает в себя и искусственный интеллект. И потом у нас будет с вами небольшой перерыв на 2 часа, и с нами будет Дэвид Гуралник из США, который будет рассказывать о переосмыслении обучения с использованием новых технологий, симуляции обучения через действие. Что ж, давайте с вами настроим перевод. Если вы помните, то со вчерашнего дня, то вам нужно нажать на кнопку «Перевод», выбрать там язык, на котором вы хотите слушать. В данном случае у нас доступен перевод на русский язык, и язык оригинала будет английский. А, Вы можете задавать вопросы в чате. Также, так как мы с вами находимся в расширении Zoom Webinars, то вы можете задавать свой вопрос через поле Q&A, вопрос-ответ. Ну, можете писать их и в чате. У нас сегодня работают и модераторы, которые будут отслеживать все эти вопросы и отвечать на ваши вопросы технические, если они вдруг возникнут. Поприветствуем их тоже. Они здесь сегодня с нами. И я, чтобы без дальнейших отлагательств, хотел бы передать слово госпоже Верлайнен. Здравствуйте. Ага. А, I'm sorry. Just give me a second. We got a problem because you are on the interpreter channel, so you are yourself. Uh, uh, I signed. Is it you yourself assigned as interpreter? So we need to. Uh, okay, we need to. Mm, uh, you to resign in, just I will give you a new link and you should exit Zoom and then come back. All right. So just because I don't know, it's a problem with Zoom. Sometimes it happens and you can do anything with that. I can send it to you in the Zoom chat right now. Yeah. So just in a personal message, you will have it right now. Got it. Okay, here you go. So this is the link. And if it okay, and if it doesn't work, you should try another link because we created two links for you because it's I don't know what's happening to Zoom, but okay. Yeah. Yeah, and and this is the second link, so maybe you should try this second link for sure because it should work for sure. Sorry for that. Yeah, you can copy the second one, yeah. Я прошу прощения, у нас просто техническая проблема с Zoom. Zoom не всегда распознает, где спикер, где переводчик. И сейчас нашего спикера назначили в переводческие каналы, и мы не можем слушать перевод. Сейчас она получила новую ссылку и зайдет с другого аккаунта. Буквально одна секунда. Можете пока что Можете пока что рассказать о ваших впечатлениях от вчерашнего дня и вообще, что вы ожидаете от сегодняшнего дня и от следующих дней нашей стажировки. Будет интересно послушать. Опять-таки, можете поднять руку и включим вам микрофон. Здравствуйте, здравствуйте. Здравствуйте, Сауля. Интересно, из каких вы учебных заведений? Если вам можно это сделать, было бы здорово, если бы вы написали, откуда вы. Познакомились заодно с коллегами, возможно, что кто-то из вашего города здесь тоже находится. Мгм. Мгм. Зашел наш спикер обратно. Окей. Сейчас мы ее переведем. Оп, все. Да, я перевожу спикера сейчас одну секунду в панелисты, и она может говорить. Окей. Коллеги, я сам переведу, хорошо, ее не надо ничего делать сейчас в зуме, я все сделаю. Все, окей, супер.
Hello again.
Yeah,
Are we
now
back?
I hear you well. Hi, hello.
Okay, that's
Hello.
nice. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Переводчики, скажите, вы слышите все? Супер.
Okay. Yes, I will choose an interpretation from Russian to English. All right. Yes. Okay. Hello, we are back. Is it okay now? Good.
Да, все прекрасно. Спасибо большое.
Can I start my presentation now?
Конечно, да, спасибо. Извините за технические неполадки.
Okay. Yes, so good afternoon, everybody. It is very nice to be here this morning. Thank you for invitation to your conference. So I'm Maaret Virolainen, coming from the Central Finland University of Jyväskylä, Finnish Institute for Educational Research. And I will speak you today about the evolution of the Finnish vocational education and training system to meet the needs of digital and artificial intelligence transformation of society. And the contents of my speech today have kind of 4 topics. I'm speaking about the overall development of societal change towards digitalized learning ecosystems first. Then thereafter I will speak about how the education system has responded to these societal changes by adopting an emphasis in general skills and 21st century skills. Thereafter, I will speak you about the development of Finnish vocational education and training system and how it has responded to these changes, these technological changes, and the twin transition. So often when the societal change, technological change is spoken about, there's an emphasis on the technology side. So while there has been a tremendous change in society from Industry 1.0 towards Industry 5.0, in parallel to the technological change, the way people engage with knowledge, have access to knowledge, and share and store knowledge has changed tremendously. And in parallel to this change in sharing and storing information and exchanging it, the organization of human practices has changed from bureaucratic organization to ecosystems. And while many scholars have emphasized, and in particular this technological change, how we have moved from logistics based on horses towards trains, aeroplanes, and cars, and how we have moved from storing knowledge via paper and pen towards mobile address via cloud into a totally different phase. In parallel to that, technological change from Industry 1.0 towards Industry 5.0, there has been this truly big change in the storage of knowledge and exchanging knowledge. And it has coincided with developing the organization. And it's it's typical for the futures researchers to say that people tend to think about the changes that are taking place in society and technology by kind of exaggerating the change in the short term and underestimating it in the long term. And therefore, I think it's quite important to think about also this transformation to the artificial intelligence age and Industry 5.0 age, looking at the in-depth change that has taken place in society in a long-term perspective. And if we look at Finland and how transformation of knowledge used to take place on paper, on newspapers, in the 1960s, the change is really thoroughgoing. Now I'm able to speak to you in Kazakhstan and via mobile tools and devices, and I don't need to change you a letter or send you a letter or and wait until I get a response from you by letter. And between organizations, this kind of exchange has enabled knowledge being delivered more fastly, efficiently, and more precisely. And this conceptual change that has tried to capture the transformation from first bureaucratic organizations toward ecosystems is something that I'm going to address next. And actually, there are several conceptions of ecosystems that have emerged to capture what kind of new organizations this new era has enabled. There are digital ecosystems, business ecosystems, and innovation ecosystems. I'm in slide 7 now, please. So, and when it comes to the educational organizations, in particular, the ecosystems of learning are interesting because in all of these organizations, digital business and innovation ecosystems, learning is taking place between the participants of those ecosystems. So what is the difference between various ecosystems? The digital ecosystem, I think, is the most common and very well known to all of you because it's based on the digital devices. And many digital devices are available for use at the same time, and they enable this kind of cross-system collaboration and removing geographic borders in a virtual sense. And they are the tools and devices and internet connecting them are these are enabling these new formations of social ecosystems that utilize technology enhanced learning. These digital ecosystems enable the business and innovation ecosystems and learning ecosystems. And the concept of business ecosystem is actually quite old. It was already proposed in the 1990s, and at that time it was quite radical that as the former organization of businesses was based in like pretty much on one field, this author who proposed this new concept, business ecosystem, James Moore, suggested that different fields of businesses should collaborate and there should be collaboration across several industries and they should form ecosystems and take advantage of innovation rather than focus on one field of production. And today it may sound quite simplistic, but at the time it was a radical idea. And the examples James Moore came was like IBM and Microsoft, and he suggested that these different business ecosystems would compete in the market fields like lions and their competitive animals and feast. Well, maybe it was a little bit like advertising for the new conception, but yeah, it's quite interesting idea. So Then if we look at the innovation ecosystem concept, it was actually developed relatively late compared to the business ecosystem concept. I'm now in slide 10 actually. And the innovation ecosystem emphasized the innovative part of the collaboration between organizing these flexible collaborations between different organizations utilizing digital means. And the innovation ecosystems were directed to value creation jointly through cooperation and co-creation, and utilizing interconnected and interdependent networked actors across different continents, and at the same time to kind of boost the innovations. These collaborations were expected to have a close connection with their customers, suppliers, innovators, and other actors, such as regulators and local firms. So, and then the next conception is this digital learning ecosystem, which is perhaps most interesting and relevant for those operating in the field of education. And it has also developed in this century. So relatively lately, even though there have been several parallel kind of sub-conceptions appearing, but it's typical for these digital learning ecosystems as defined that they enable combinations of many various technological devices involving computers naturally, and computers connected to internet. And the digital learning ecosystems also rely on alternations of distant learning via internet delivered content, and then pedagogical assignments organized both on and offline. Further, they can involve individual and group learning and participation of learners in group of peers, teachers, and or just focusing on individual and self-directed learning, utilizing the materials and devices that are available and connected to the platform that is utilized for sharing and delivering the learning content. And due to the variety of technologies utilized in these digital learning ecosystems, and that there is an emergent nature in the sense that new devices are coming up every now and then, there are several names that have been given to these various digital learning ecosystems. So it can be thought that this digital learning ecosystem is kind of an umbrella concept for these various technological systems and learning approaches which have a little bit different emphasis, just such as digital e-learning, blended learning, or personalized learning ecosystem. So I'm moving forward to the slide 13. In a conference a couple of years ago, I asked the audience what kind of ecosystems are most relevant to them, and the answer I received from the participants who were working in the field of education answered that they are focusing and engaged in the digital learning ecosystems mostly. So I suggested that it would be nice if you also would participate in such a poll. It's in the next slide. If you like, you can take your mobile devices and go to the QR code and make a choice. And we'll see if we have a response from you and come back to it later in the presentation. So, uh, we go a little bit backward, then again. Uh, and try to think about what preceded these concepts of ecosystems, digital ecosystems, business ecosystems, innovation ecosystems, and learning ecosystems. Uh, uh, there were actually several scholars across Europe who were trying to capture the societal chains. And if we think about the relation of universities and society in particular, in the United States, researcher Florida started to speak about the learning regions, how innovative businesses and collaborations between universities enabled the development of whole regions. Then several scholars have spoken about how these business university relations will transform to models of triple helix and even tuple helix involving associations and active organizations in society more generally. And overall, there has been discussion about moving to knowledge economy, where the importance of knowledge for the well-being and flourishing of the society is becoming more and more important. And as to the organizational relations, the next slide. Similarly, there have been several scholars who have tried to capture this change. There has been very many scholars in the field of social sciences who have discussed the network analysis and actor network approach. Manuel Castells was very famous in the late 1990s. He spoke about these network relationships and network enterprises that were emerging. So truly, this change that has taken place in the organizational forms, it has been challenging to capture, while the technological change is kind of visible and you can see mobile devices changing and new technological tools emerging. This how people are organized. It has been a challenge to capture also for scholars and to picture uh, how it happens, but it is important to pay attention also to it and understand it. Uh, it it demands attention when education is planned. So next, if we look at this latest industrial revolution and what it has meant, it is expected that the collaboration between machines and human beings will enhanced. There will be more personalized, individualized goods such as shoes and clothing available, and there is more attention to customer satisfaction, collecting feedback. You are probably already familiar with these collaborative systems, cobots that which take routine tasks online, and chatbot bots. It is expected that while humans take care of the higher order tasks, then and administration, supervision of these systems and decision making, uh, the artificial intelligence tools will be administered by humans, but they will gain more and more independence. So there is going to be also a greater prioritization of taking benefits of big data analytics, 3D printing, artificial intelligence, advanced robotics, and Internet of Things, and they will be combined into traditional ways of making things in new and unexpected ways. So, what kind of threats and opportunities are related to adopting and adapting to this societal change? It's been expected that on the positive side, the new technology will enable elimination of repetitious work. There will be new job opportunities and new job roles. But it's it's possible that also there are some negative effects coming up. So I'm moving to the next slide. So it's possible that there is some job displace and people need to reskill themselves. There may be a decline in wages and employment opportunities. And it's expected that primarily high pay occupations require require adaptation to the administration of utilization of artificial intelligence. And of course, there are a lot of ethical issues coming up about sharing knowledge through artificial intelligence tools, and and from the perspective of schools, plagiarism, of course, a typical thing that schools have to deal with. So what kind of skills will be needed in the future? There are skills related to developing and maintaining these AI systems and using and interacting with AI application, having basic digital skills, data science, and other cognitive and transversal skills. And it's also important to remember that there are things that artificial intelligence cannot do. It cannot do complex problem solving, high-level management, and social interaction. And it makes mistakes. It needs to be oversighted by humans. It hallucinates, it makes crashes. So, but in general, if we move to the next slide, we can expect that artificial intelligence will be used more and more, but it will be adopted in different ways to different tasks. Or when it comes to analytical tasks, computing can be used in tasks that need less trust, and they can provide information without decision making. The decision making is left to humans, and they can do this kind of predictive maintenance and control environment in via Internet of Things. But when more and more independence is expected, then more and more trust is required from the artificial intelligence, and so it becomes even more critical. Where is the responsibility line? It's quite unexpected that artificial intelligence would be given automation when we look at it from the perspective of today. But maybe in the future the control software of artificial intelligence will improve, and it can be given more autonomy. So then if we move to think about this response of education, how education has responded to the societal change toward digitalization and Industry 5.0 and artificial intelligence. It's best to first kind of remind ourselves about the concepts of competence and transversal competence, whereas the concept of competence refers to the ability that individuals have to complete one given task, and it can be both skills and knowledge, information. The transversal competencies refer to competencies that are not related to only a given situation or tasks, but can be moved and applied regardless where they were attained. They can be applied in any professional situation or tasks. And these transversal competencies include innovative thinking, interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, global citizenship, physical and psychological health as defined by UNESCO. And in general, if we move to the slide 24, when it comes to these skills definitions and definitions of generic skills, the education systems have developed tremendously in all societies during last century. In many societies, basic education has become a norm, and more people have access to higher education. In many Western societies, the share of people participating in higher education is over 50%. So whereas in the past, the generic skills were understood rather individually and to be applied individually to survive in routine context. Also in the field of education, there has been a shift to emphasize these polycontextual skills. And if we look at this categorization developed by Professor David Coyle and presented in the slide 25, we can see on the upper left-hand side the kind of skills where the education system focuses. In the beginning of last century, it was the goal that basic education is developed so that everybody has the literacy, numeracy, and then in the end of the century there was more and more emphasis on the ICT skills. And now, in particular, these polycontextual skills, intellective skills, and boundary crossing skills are demanded more and more. They are on the right-hand side in the lower box. So on the side of these polycontextual skills, intellective skills, and boundary crossing skills, of course, these contextual skills such as technical, socio-cultural, participative, and competence key qualifications are needed, as well as these entrepreneurial skills and symbolic analytic skills. But the understanding is that in education, due to this technological change, we need to put our aims higher and aim and develop learners, in particular also these polycontextual skills, intellectual skills, and boundary crossing skills, so that the other types of generic skills are not enough anymore. So then if we look at how the Finnish education system has changed to respond to the overall societal change since the 19th century, It has been a long journey. The first vocational colleges were established in Finland in the 19th century. There was a schooling for seafaring started in 1813, healthcare and midwifery in 1816, and business colleges were established in 1839. So quite many vocational education colleges were established already at that time. But at that time, they were higher education of the society, and actually basic education for all citizens was established in Finland in 1920s, so it's really a minority of population participating in the vocational education at that time. And after then in the 1950s, if we move to the next slide, please. The kind of the beginning of modern vocational education training system started in the 1950s. Then a law was set that it was the duty of every community to establish a vocational education and training college if they had a population of more than 20,000. And thereafter, there was this move from guilds and masters and the medieval vocational education system towards a really modern system of VET. And then if we look at how the curricula for the vocational education and training has changed since the 1960s. In the beginning, it was typical to have very specialized curricula for each vocational branch. And nowadays the trend is towards more generic vocational qualifications. And as we can see, well, in Finland, in the 1950s, there were quite a lot of people still occupied in farming, but in 1980s, the majority of population was already occupied in the services. So the social change was fast, and also the need for developing vocational education was very demanding to adapt to the changes. So here is an overall picture of how the number of qualifications has changed and the qualification structure has changed from 1990s to 2020. And in parallel to the change of upper secondary vocational education training, there has been this increase of higher education. The universities of applied sciences were established in the 1990s, and they have become very important route for higher education, also for those who complete vocational upper secondary education. And those who complete vocational upper secondary education have eligibility to higher education since 2000. In 2021, upper secondary education became obligatory for all young, so young aged 15 years have to participate in general upper secondary education or vocational upper secondary education. And there has been a curriculum change taking place in the vocational education training every 3-5 years. And since 1990s, Finland has adopted this modular curriculum. Vocational education training lasts 3 years. It has been extended so that people have stronger vocational skills and and they have a more in-depth education in the field in general. But since 2010, we have moved towards competence-based approach. and harmonized our WET with the European credit system for WET in order to enhance mobility and lifelong learning. And nowadays we have the same curricula in the WET sector, both for young adults and adults. So this next slide pictures how gradually the Finnish vocational upper secondary education was transformed so that it gave eligibility to higher education. And it has been thought that since the society has become more and more complex, people need higher education, and it's important that a larger share of population has access to higher education and continue to education throughout lifetime and while they are at work also, so as to be able to reskill and move from one occupation to another when the tasks and the skills needed in the world of work are changing. So if we look at the Finnish education system, which is presented in slide 33, we can see that all routes enable alternating, changing the educational route and progressing further. So there are no dead ends in the Finnish education system. And then if we look at what the structure of Finnish VET qualifications look like at present, as it is seen in the slide 35, we can see that it's approximately a 3-year qualification, but students can study it at the pace at individual pace depending on how fast they progress. So if they are quick learners, they can fulfill their qualification in a shorter period of time. And there is quite a lot of emphasis in the common studies. Which are important in the sense that they are kind of providing the generic skills that are important for having transversal competencies. You can find a link in this slide to the individual qualification requirements, the individual Finnish qualification requirements, so that if you are interested in a particular field, particular occupation, you can go to this e-requirements link and choose English language there and look for those individual qualifications. And if we think about this artificial intelligence and digitalization and transformation to the Industry 5.0, of course, individual occupations are touched by this change in very different ways. Electrical engineering is kind of in the center of this change, whereas if we think about the healthcare and health services, uh, it is possible to have robots and digital services organized, for example, for elderly people, but at the same time, it is costly. And if we think about businesses, the pace in which they adopt new technologies naturally depends on their capacity to invest in new technologies. So the change will take place in uneven pace, and it's therefore also very difficult to foresee what is going to change and at what pace. So if we look at the vocational education training system and how it has enabled progress into higher education in Finland. This picture tells about how at present day it's around 40% of the students in the universities of applied sciences that come from the vocational education and training route. So participation in higher education is one thing that has been emphasized in the Finnish society as a way to adapt to this societal change. So if we think about how the education system in general in Finland has adapted to this Industry 5.0 change, it has made its system more flexible. There are personalized study programs. In the VET, it's possible to combine both apprenticeship and training agreement. So employment on the job training has become a vital part of the qualifications, and work-based learning has been enhanced since 1990s very much. Collaboration with the world of work by the vocational education institutions has become very important. Also, this compulsory education age has become higher. It has, since the level of education has increased in society in general, and the complexity of societies and societal functions has become more complex. It has become more and more important to have a qualification in order to enter employment and to have any kind of job. So if you only have a 9-year compulsory education, it really doesn't give an access to employment. And the vocational education colleges have enabled kind of ongoing access to students. So students can start their education at various points of time during the terms. And this of course also based on the modular structure of the education. So now I would like to ask you to write in the chat so as to have this a more interactive approach, that what kind of features do you think that are relevant uh, developing vocational education training in your system, and have some of these features already been adopted in your system, like individualized study programs and flexibility and digital learning, enhanced web-based learning, access to higher education, and enhanced generic skills. So thank you for your attention, and your any questions are very welcome. You can find the references to my speak in the end of the slides, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Большое спасибо. Это, правда, было интересно послушать о том, как сегодня работает ТИПО в Финляндии. У нас есть, конечно, вопросы, и пока вы можете отвечать на вопрос госпожи Верлайнен по поводу того, какие вы используете техники в своих учебных заведениях. Я вижу, что отвечают индивидуальные учебные программы, усиление обучения на рабочем месте, индивидуальные учебные программы, гибкость, доступ к высшему образованию, индивидуальные учебные программы, опять же, доступ к высшему образованию. Окей. Хорошо, продолжайте отвечать, а мы тогда приступим к вопросам. Первый вопрос от Елены Батнари. Добрый день. Как можно сохранить равновесие между искусственным интеллектом и естественным интеллектом в образовании, по вашему мнению?
I only hear the Russian speak, so I don't understand. So please, if there is a way to translate any questions in the chat or anything, That would be
Мгм.
helpful. Yeah.
Хорошо, меня сейчас, вы слышите меня сейчас? Вы слышите перевод?
Okay.
Мгм.
Mm.
Скажите, пожалуйста, сейчас перевод работает?
Yes, now I hear the interpretation. Yes, yes, thank
Отлично,
you.
хорошо. И в таком случае вопрос был следующий. Как можно сохранить равновесие, по вашему мнению, между искусственным интеллектом и естественным интеллектом в образовании?
Yes. Yes, I think that's a very good question because the artificial intelligence kind of invites you to ask questions from Copilot and uh, and but well, teachers have to motivate their students a lot and realize that we have to control and we have to have the understanding, the kind of traditional understanding about tasks, about ways and methods to do things, so that we can understand if the artificial intelligence is making mistake, is it hallucinating, or is the knowledge and answers it is giving, are they correct? For example, engineering and calculating, it will help a lot, but still there is a need to check if the answers are correct. So yes, maybe we may have to start like giving examples also about the mistakes that artificial intelligence may make without controlling it, and in that way motivate and increase the understanding about the importance of human conduct behind it all.
Мгм.
Mhm.
Спасибо большое. Есть еще один вопрос. И вопрос следующий. Вы описали развитие финской модели профессионального образования как переход от жестких квалификационных структур к более гибкой компетентной системе. Как, по вашему мнению, финская система справляется с оценкой компетенций, если обучение становится все более индивидуализированным и модульным?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I think that is a very good question, in the sense that we have these national qualification requirements, and they define the contents for these modules of curriculum, uh, each module individually, and they also give the criteria for assessments. So, despite that, the study programs have become kind of more individualized, in the sense that it's possible to combine parts of different occupations qualifications. The criteria for each module kind of check, correct, guarantee, and assess. The assessment is based on criteria that is given. So the personalized curriculum means that it's possible for students to kind of learn at work or learn at school by training at school, but still they have to meet the criteria. And it's true that for teachers and the supervisors who guide the students, this means a lot of work. They have to familiarize with the criteria, and if they can accredit the students' learning based on different kinds of learning environments where they have been uh, uh, learning what they need to learn. So it's uh, uh, it's not easy, yeah. But I think that this the since 1990s and since the competence-based approach was adopted, Finnish education system, in the Finnish education system, there has been a lot of work and development done in in developing these new requirements, qualification requirements. They are quite detailed, actually.
Спасибо большое. Еще один вопрос. В вашей презентации было сказано, что работа меняется, появляются новые профессии от менеджеров роботов до дизайнеров взаимодействия с искусственным интеллектом. Как финские колледжи сегодня оперативно обновляют программы, чтобы идти в ногу с этими изменениями, учитывая, что эти изменения могут происходить даже там каждый год, либо каждые полгода?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, that's a very good question too. Thank you. I know that the Finnish vocational education colleges, they have regular kind of a national online meetings to discuss between themselves. They each vocational college, they have their ICT AI specialists who participate in the national network to discuss these changes. And of course, there are also events where teachers participate so as to learn about the latest changes. And there are conferences organized regularly in the field of ICT to develop pedagogies that are utilizing latest ICT skills. But as you said, the pace of change is really demanding, and collaboration with the other experts in the field working in similar positions in vocational colleges has been very important in this sense, because it's not possible to organize formal education for all teachers all the time. So it has to be more flexible and agile and just trying to keep in pace with the change with the initiative of teachers themselves. So there's in Finland, the vocational education teachers, they have by relatively high education. They have master's education, and then they have the teacher education and experience in the field of occupation where they are working. And there's a kind of quite a lot of emphasis put on the initiative of the teachers also to develop themselves and be active in keeping themselves up to date in relation to what is going on in these occupations and in the field of work.
Спасибо большое. Да, это имеет смысл. И последний, наверное, вопрос, пока больше не вижу, это что касается образования взрослых людей. То есть большое количество людей в грядущей новой цифровой революции с искусственным интеллектом должны будут как-то переобучиться, либо их работа потеряет актуальность. И может ли в этом быть как-то полезно ТИПО и вообще в целом профессиональное образование, чтобы переобучать большое количество взрослых людей?
Yes, yes, indeed. And well, the Finnish vocational education training system has the same qualification requirements for young and adults. And of course, research have been also discussing whether this is a good thing, or are there some problems related to it. But in Finland, we have quite a small population. We have to have kind of multi-functioning vocational colleges which are addressing both the groups of young and adults. But I very much agree that the adult education is important, and it's also very important that people have a very good basis for learning new things from early age, so that the compulsory education gives them literacy, numeracy, and ICT skills which enable them to continue lifelong learning. And unfortunately, in Finland, there have been quite a lot of funding cut from adult education, vocational adult education in particular. So I think that the present policy is that more emphasis is given to higher education than to vocational adult education, actually. But of course, also at the same time, our population is decreasing and the elderly population is increasing. So we have to kind of adapt to the changes in the population size also.
Спасибо большое. И вот все, это уже последний вопрос, немножко мы выходим за время здесь. Спасибо за доклад. Вопрос от Ольги Жук. Вопрос: поликонтекстуальные навыки – это междисциплинарные и межотраслевые навыки, так или нет? Контекстуальные навыки скорее не могут развиваться без универсальных, индивидуальных. А как вы считаете? Вопрос просто свести можно его до того, что контекстуальные навыки
Yes,
скорее не могут развиваться без
yes,
универсальных.
yes.
Окей.
Yeah, yeah. So the universal individual skills, they are the basis, but on the top of that, there is this need to mediate between different forms of expertise. For example, because well, in the times of the twin transition towards digitalization and adapting to the climate change, there is a lot of expertise needed and collaboration between different types of experts. And then the communication skills become more and more important, and also that people understand that they need to collaborate with experts coming from different fields and organize such collaboration, have skills for uh, flexibly move from different tasks and forms of making things uh, to a totally different environment. So this ecosystems of learning perspective is, I think it's quite important in the sense that whereas in the old time in the school it was taught that also in the work organizations that maybe it's the one building and one place where people go to work. Now people can work distantly. They can work distantly with people from different organizations. And this is exactly what is meant with these kind of polycontextual skills. You have many kinds of collaborations, and you have to be kind of flexible and understanding in that sense that this is the context where you are now operating. It's different from the past.
Спасибо большое. Это был последний вопрос. Мы благодарим вас за ваше выступление. Было действительно полезно и интересно послушать. И если вы хотите, мы будем рады, если вы останетесь с нами на сегодняшний день и на следующие дни нашей стажировки, чтобы послушать других спикеров. Спасибо вам большое.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Спасибо. А мы с вами переходим...
Bye-bye.
До свидания. Мы с вами переходим к нашему следующему спикеру. Это Мухтхайзер Амар, эксперт в области лидерства в образовании, непрерывного профессионального развития, цифровой трансформации и профессионального обучения. И сегодня он будет рассказывать о системе ТИПО в Малайзии, о том, как происходит цифровая трансформация ради навыков будущего. Здравствуйте, добрый день.
Hello, is my voice audible?
Пожалуйста, проверьте, чтобы у вас был включен английский канал, чтобы мы могли вас переводить. Я надеюсь, что он уже включен, и все у нас хорошо.
Yes, I can hear.
О, прекрасно, замечательно, хорошо. В таком случае передаю вам слово.
Can I start? Yeah, thank you so much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings, good day, and thanks for having me to talk on the digital transformation in Tibet education. This is a great opportunity for me to share Malaysian practices on Tibet education, something that is very important, something that is so much being highlighted by the governments, especially in Malaysia, on having a clear and clear pathway on Tibet education. The topic that I will be presenting today is on digital transformation, but looking at the future skills, employment, and the necessary workforce, what kind of technology that we can adopt, and how can we leverage all of these technologies for the contributing to the meaningful learning environment among our Tibet learners. Can you please move to the next slide? So the point of discussion of today's presentation will cover the following topics: the overview, some information on the Tibet philosophy, our own vision and mission statement in the Malaysian Tibet practices. I would like also to share about the Tibet ecosystem, what kind of technology that we can leverage on and infuse in the Tibet teaching and learning environment, what would be the best Tibet pedagogical approach that we can apply in our classroom setting. I would be more interested on discussing pertaining to the policy statement. In Malaysia, we just recently launched our Tibet policy statement. I think that might be interesting to be shared with the audience. I would also like to share a bit of my experiences on having a benchmarking visit to two different countries in 2022. And I will end my presentation by sharing the current national Tibet policy that was launched last 2 years in 2023. So moving to the next slide, okay. So in Malaysia, we refer Tibet as an ongoing process of education. We embrace what we call as lifelong learning. So ultimately, what we want from our grassroots of the nation is to make sure that we have competent and skillful workers. So when we look at the advanced countries like China, like Korea, they were flourished because of their competent and skillful workers, and therefore they are able to produce products and goods where they export throughout the globe. And this is important because as a country, to bring up the country to become an advanced country, we need to have products and goods that we can sell over the countries. Okay. So in order to do that, what do we need in terms of Tibet education? We need to have the right and skillful people to work in the manufacturing industries across different fields, services, hospitalities, to make sure that we are able to provide the best products and services. And what's the issue now in most countries when we talk about Tibet? It's about the skill gaps. And because we do not have the right skills to work, so we are competing on the issues of unemployment. So not many Tibet graduates will get the right pathway to the desired occupation. And all in all, it is basically impact on the economic growth of a nation. So in Malaysia, we have over 1,000 institutions that provide Tibet programs, where all of these institutions are segregated by the 7 ministries. And interesting to note that we have over 90% of marketability rate among Tibet graduates in Malaysia. And we hope by 2030, we have a beautifully processes of developing and nurturing the TVET graduates for prospering the Vision 2030 to become one of the advanced countries in the world. So we uphold the TVET philosophy. I hope we are in the same slide. Can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So we uphold the philosophy in TVET because TVET is a very much aligned to the progressive and pragmatic approach, where we believe that the process of developing the highly skilled human capital requires a continuous effort. And this is not only come from the education per se, but it is also come from the training programs that we provide for the youngsters, for the people who are desired to learn skill-based academic programs. And we hope that by the next 10 years, the country will be flourish by having a well-rounded, highly skilled workers who are able to perform their technical abilities, not only technicalities, practical competencies, but also we hope that they are able to develop their employability skills, soft skills elements, and also we are looking at nurturing the values through values-based education. And all of these competencies, I would say, is very important to mold the TVET graduates. And of course, when we talk about the TVET education, it is about lifelong learning processes. Moving to the next slides, we hold on these two important elements when we talk about TVET in Malaysia. So vision is a hoping statement that we crafted out to make sure that we are able to develop our nation by having skilled human capital. On how we can do this, what will be the strategy on achieving this vision? We have a mission statement. We hope that we have this responsive, flexible, and inclusive TVET for Malaysia. So moving to the next slide. This is the TVET ecosystem in Malaysia. As I mentioned earlier, we have multi-ministry governance of TVET education. It comes from the Ministry of Human Resource, Ministry of Tourism, also Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Education. So one of the critical issues here is the inconsistency on the definitions of the TVET, the best practices that we can adopt for TVET education across ministries. And another activities or strategy that we have been doing so far is the public-private partnership through the Federation of Malaysian Skill Development Centers. So once the students, the TVET graduates, completed their TVET program at the TVET institution providers, they can reskilling and upskilling their skill through this agency. And when we talk about accrediting of the curriculum, the TVET curriculum, we have two important agencies, what we call as MQA, is the Malaysian Qualification Agency, and the National Occupational of Standards, looking at the industry standards, whether the curriculum that we develop at the TVET institutions align with what the industry needs. Okay? And we talk about the issues on the perceptions of the people out there in terms of the TVET education. Okay, so it is quite interesting to know that some stakeholders out there, the people, still have this stigma that is saying TVET is a second-class education. So this is quite a barrier and challenges that we are combating at the moment, making sure that the people will value TVET not only as the academic program, but it's also as a mainstream education that promise a better future in the workforce. moving to the next slides, I would like to share with you guys on this marketability of the graduate students, TVET graduates in Malaysia. And based on the figure, we can see that the large proportions of the percentage of those graduates from the TVET programs, and close to 70% and above of the proportion of TVET graduates get straight away to the employment. And it shows that the industry needs all of these graduates to work in the industries. They need the skilled workforce to flourish the economic growth. And it is also important for these graduates to keep track and to demonstrate the skills that they have learned in TVET program straight away once they graduate from the TVET academic program. And some of the portions of the graph of the pie chart shows that about 17% of the TVET graduates they are pursuing the higher degree. So this is a good indicator that is saying that TVET is also provide an opportunity to continue and pursuing higher education. And just a minimal percentage over there of TVET graduates is still seeking for a right job. So they tend to, doing some job hopping, trying out from one job to another job to suit with their job interests. Okay. So the next slide demonstrates the TVET pathway in Malaysia. I'm sorry because the slide is in Malay, but basically we have two education pathways in Malaysia. If you could see on the right side, it is on the TVET pathway. So at the low primary school level, they have two options, whether they can go to the basic vocational education and straight away by continuing their TVET education at the skill training institutions provided by the government agency, and they can pursuing their education straight to the university in Malaysia that provide diploma and bachelor's degree level. These groups of university, we call it as MTUN. MTUN stands for Malaysia Technical University Network. These four universities provide TVET based program, academic program at the bachelor degree and diploma level. So when we talk about the difference between the TVET education and then the mainstream education, like at the lower secondary level, once they complete their lower secondary level, they can choose either to continue the mainstream education that provide sciences, pure sciences subject matters. They can continuing on education in terms of looking at the subjects that is very much into conventional subject matters like biology, law, and other subject matters like social sciences. But they also have an opportunity once they complete their low secondary level to straight away joining the vocational college, where they can earn the certificate, Malaysian certificate of vocational and Malaysian certificate, the skill certificates of Malaysia, and they can pursuing the tertiary education by attending the either college, vocational college, community college, or even at the polytechnic level to earn the diploma. And so that's the new strategy that we have in Malaysia, that the students will have an opportunity to go whether on the conventional education mainstream or go to the TVET education TVET education pathway. So it is beautifully strategized in terms of the opportunity that we give to the Malaysian students. So that is a stigma and perceptions of the people that those students who go for the TVET pathway to TVET career track are those students who are underperforming students. So that is not really a true condition that is happening in Malaysia. Now we have sort of a balanced approach or a balanced understanding that those students who go for the TVET pathway is also those students are very good at the academic performance. Okay. So moving to the next slides. So these are some of the spotted issues and challenges based on studied and research and observations at the government level. We look at the issues on the governance, and pertaining to the governance issue, when we have 7 ministries oversee the TVET education, definitely it creates some conflicts and misunderstanding. So we want to minimize that particular issue and having a consensus what would be the best practices of TVET program that we can offer in Malaysia. Another issue is on the quality of the academic and the curriculum content that we provide for the TVET learners. So therefore, we actively get an assistant helps from the Malaysian Qualification Agency, from the North National Occupational Standards, to ensure that the curriculum that we develop and deliver to the TVET learners meet up the standards. And another issue that hamper the effective TVET implementation is the lack of the industrial collaborations. And we understand that this issue is due to the nature of the economic ecosystem in Malaysia, where we are very much importing goods from other countries. And we attracted the foreign investors to develop industries, to develop their factories, services, and park in Malaysia. So there might be a bit of sentiments of less of patriotism there. So therefore, the industrial collaboration not really as strong as other countries who have their own companies and innovators, creators of the goods and products that producing the goods and product in a mass scale. Okay, issues on funding and the brandings are also those critical challenges. Looking at the current economic disparities, balancing with the something that is good to have, something that is, we talk about the use of technology. Definitely technology application and devices are not it's expensive, therefore we need to earn more funding, get more funding to support the strategic planning to have more technology appliances in teaching and learning ecosystem. So moving to the next slides, I would now like to touch a bit on the technology diffusion in TVET. So we have a lot of technology and application digital that we can apply in teaching and learning ecosystem. We talk about the metaverse, one of the beneficial contribution from the metaverse education. If we can reduce the cost of providing the raw materials when we do any TVET practical activities in the lab, for instance. When we do, when we have the students to practicing welding skills, for instance, we do not have to buy the raw materials in bulk. So by having this metaverse environments, virtual reality, it helps students to learn via technologies. And multimodalities, we have a lot of technologies this day on having the connected learning, having distance learning. The students can learn and understand the concept of some of the TVET program, like for instance, learning on embedding the idea of hospitality or culinary or making bread, for instance, and we can learn asynchronously using micro-credential courses, for instance. And it is also good to have like a synchronous tracking system where we can gather data, and this data is important for us to understand the issues and something that is pertaining to the students' profiling, for instance. So the tracking system will help us to mitigate some of the issues of our students' inactivity in TVET learning ecosystem. So moving to the next slides, when we talk about TVET pedagogy, previously we are very much influenced by the traditional in-person classroom teaching and learning. And because of the new learning modalities, we can have various pedagogical approaches. And one of the examples that we are applying in Malaysia when we talk about a specific subject matters like culinary arts, hospitality, we have an influencers, and the students nowadays learn from the Instagram and TikTok videos. When they have their influences, it will motivate their their curiosity to know what is happening in the current industrial setting when we talk about hospitality and culinary industries. So that is very important, and that is what World Economic Forum suggested on having a different and to engage with the learners, TVET learners in more digital way, right? And now the issue on the TVET pedagogy, whether we can cope with the needs of 21st century skills requirements. Are we able to produce not only skillful graduates, but also we need to think about the capacities of our students to practicing some of the employability skills, the soft skills, values when it comes to the real workforce environments. Okay, and TVET education, the pedagogy lies on the importance of the spirits of no one is left behind. So we need to ensure that when we use the technology, we have an opportunity to reach out to the students, to the underprivileged students who reside in the rural areas. So making sure that we have an opportunity to engage them using technology. And these are to the next slides. This is the policy statement on making sure that this policy statement will make whatever the vision and mission that we state in our blueprint can be realistically occurs in a way that we want. So again, it is important for us to ensure that we have a skilled employees through flexible and creative and well-training workforce, making sure that whatever we provide at the TVET educational providers is similar to what the industry is doing. And also we embracing on the importance of the reskilling and upskilling, because this is upskilling programs for the continuous professional development, not only for the graduates, but also for the TVET educators. We encourage them to keep on improving their competency levels and through the lifelong learning initiatives. And because we know that we are living in the age of digitalizations, where we need to optimize the technology and the digital in many ways. So we allow the flexibility and dynamism of TVET instructors to try out all of these technologies and tools. And finally, we hope that although the workforce has become more competitive these days, we hope that we can stop relying on the foreign laborers and we hope that we can provide more job opportunities to the Malaysians. not really stopping accepting foreign labors in a way that we want to stop totally all, but I think we should also give better options and opportunity to the Malaysian people when it comes to work placement. Moving to the next slides, this is an interesting information that I would like to share with you on the TVET best practices in Singapore and Spain. I had an opportunity to attend a benchmarking visits, and moving to the next slides, I went to the Singapore Polytechnic, and we did receive an invitation from Singapore Polytechnic to participate in their workshop and training session. They applied what they call as the CDIO framework, the conceive, design, implement, and operate. So this framework is basically a pedagogical framework for engineering education and TVET. And it covers from the curriculum development until the process of delivering this teaching and learning content. Moving to the next slide, the benchmarking visit is to establish a technology-driven teaching and learning ecosystem for EE and TVET, engineering education and TVET, to cultivate educators. We have the technology in Malaysia, but how can we optimize the technology using a specific framework? Sometimes there is a situation that we have the technology, but we don't really optimize that technology. And maybe because due to a lack of training and because of the technology is moving too fast. And therefore, we would like to benchmark whether the technology that we have in Malaysian TVET institution would be the same as technology that being practiced in Singapore, our neighboring country. And we attended that benchmarking visit by joining some training sessions, learning about the CDIO as TVET pedagogy, and we examine the teaching and learning practices in Singapore. And moving to the next slides, when we talk about technology adaptation in teaching and learning, it is crucial to be discussed in this platform that when we have the technology, how can we use this technology and adapt this technology in TVET teaching and learning environment. So in Singapore Polytechnic, they have advanced teaching and learning equipments, technologies, digital application and softwares that supports TVET learners. And when we talk about Digital Building Innovation Center, it is basically they have this kind of robotics arms to show the application that comes in the real life, real industrial experiences. They also have this small scale of power plant generated by the Producing and Energy and Chemicals Technology Center. And they also have this 5G speeds of internet broadcasting by having this AIoT in the Internet of Things. It is not artificial, it is an advanced Internet of Things center because they have this in this technology in this center. They replicating the ideas of growing the crops and plants indoor. So because they do not have enough land to grow up their own crops, so they imposing the values to their grassroots, to the people, to grow their own crops at home. So they have this technology to be used for the crop production for the family use. And the Advanced Manufacturing Center, if you can see from this page, from the picture over there, it is a conventional or traditional lathe machine. And this lathe machine is just a simple lathe machine. But what is the interesting about this technology? They plug into data tracking system to ensure when the students are doing with lathe machining activities, they are able to measure the students' competency based on the LEAD's mission curriculum. And moving to the next slides, they are also the Singapore Polytechnic applies like the positive the measure the atmosphere at their institutions, making sure that the students enjoy and uh, learning at the meaningful learning experiences by getting some data on how important it is the environments, the ecosystem that can flourish the meaningful learning environment for the TVET learners. So they have the data, they have this carbon dioxide IoT appliances. They can measure how much carbon dioxide level at their institutions when we have because this is one of the key strategic in Singapore. In the next 5 years, they want to be the first country with the carbon net zero. So the amount of carbon dioxide being emitted to the atmosphere will be the same as the level of oxygens that being produced by the plants. So that is one of the important strategic that being in place in Singapore. Moving to the next slide on the pedagogical approach. So what does it mean by CDIO? It is an abbreviation that represents the conceiving, meaning that getting and retrieving some of the information from the real time. And we talk about the need analysis. It is basically a framework that represents how the engineering education should be practiced, how TVET education can use CDIO to make sure that the process of learning TVET academic program can be structured by having this framework. So from conceiving and then designing the problem that the conceiving the issues and problems from the real sites and locations, from the industrial setting, they will design and generating some ideas and thoughts about the solution, about the device, about the innovation that they can produce to solve the problem that they conceive from the real-time experiences. And then they will design and develop all of these ideas by producing a mock-up, a model, and prototyping activities is also involved in the designing stage. And then they will implement and testing out, experimenting out whether the products and innovation they produce will be able to solve the issues. And if it's confirmed, the use of this product will benefit to the industrial stakeholders, they will operate it. They will keep on progressing on monitoring and evolve and rethinking whether the system works, or is there any corrective measures that need to be taken to modify to solve the issues. Why CDIO? So the next slide will be on why CDIO. CDIO framework has been using by over 150 universities in the world, and it is still growing. So when we had this opportunity to visit Singapore Polytechnic, we can understand how useful it is, this framework, to ensure that we are able to produce competent TVET graduates as well as engineers in Malaysia. So moving to the next slides. So basically there are 12 components of CDIO framework from the context of the content of the learning to the learning objective, the learning outcomes. The second one, how can we leverage on transdisciplinary curriculums by having integrations in the engineering perspective. It is important for us to share the basic and principle of the engineering fundamental ideas, the design and implementation, the engineering workspaces. Having a maker space will help the students to generate ideas and produce interesting innovations. The process of integrated learning processes from the theoretical and practical knowledges. And also, it is important to engage the students with the active learning, and the role as the TVET or engineering educators is to ensure that they keep on the competency level to make sure that whatever the competency the workers, the employees that they have in the industry will be the same standards as the practices and the content that will be delivered by the educators at the TVET institutions. Also need to consider on the best learning assessment and the evaluation tools, making the process of program evaluation, and then the reflection will come through. Moving to the next slides is on the CDIO, the vision to cultivate the students who are not only good in performing some skillful, not only good at doing certain job with the right skill, but also need to be comprehensive to become an expert. And moving to the missions, having this CDIO will help through the process of skill integrations, design rich experiences, and active learning approach. And because of the technology comes in the process of teaching and learning in Tibet and engineering education, they need to understand about the modern learning environments through the use of the smart classrooms, collaborative workspaces, and makerspace, for instance. And all of these CDIO frameworks must keep on and continuously improve to ensure that the process of assessment and evaluation process meet at the standards at the occupational standards. So moving to the next slide is on another benchmarking visit. It is in Spain. I had an opportunity to visit Technica in Gipuzkoa, Spain, and this visit it is based on my research grant entitled this Excellence Consortium Research Grant. So moving to the next slides, the objective of this benchmarking visit is to observe the first-hand Technica's success in developing a competent workforce. So it is interesting to share that the graduates from the TVET program in Spain can work overboard, meaning that they can work in European countries. They can cross the borders, and what Spain does is to outsource their skillful employees to work to other countries. So this is, I would say, like a pragmatic TVET program approach that being applied in Spain. And Technica is an institution that will first receive the technology before they can invite teachers to test out this technology. It is like a technology playground for the teachers, for the TVET educators there. And the key goals of this visit, definitely we would like to understand what would be the CPD training, what kind of the pragmatic training that they apply for the TVET instructors. And considering the new technologies, the emerging technologies, how does Technica impose the ideas of technology and integrates into the teaching and learning environments. And I'm going to share with you about the recent TVET pedagogical approach on the following slide. And we hope that by having these collaborations, by having this visit, we can kickstart on doing some research and networking activities, including mobility programs and knowledge sharing. So to the next slide, it is the technology portfolio in Technica. They share the similar concept of technology and digital appliances, similar like Singapore just now, but I think they have more advanced features on each of these technology. if you look upon the aquaphonic centers on the right side of the image, this is at the first floor of the Technica building where they have this aquaphonic center. You can see that there is a banana tree and they have the fish growing in the pond, right, as to supplement the banana tree in terms of the fertilizer. And they have this 5G and advanced IoT center that monitor and tracking the current atmosphere of the institutions. They have advanced 3D printing technology. Even they have printing technology that can make a products and printed out a product that identical to the real things. Digital Building Innovation Center is another small scale power plant. So moving to the next slides, this is the interesting pedagogical approach that I would like to share with the audience on the latest and recent pedagogical approach that being applied in Spain. They call this as a challenge-based learning. We might familiar with problem-based, project outcome-based learning, but to engage and interact with their TVET learners, they apply what they call as challenge-based learning. It is an innovative, student-centered pedagogical approach where learners collaborate to solve the real-world problems. So it is based on this statement, it is similar like problem and project outcome-based learning. But the following sentence, which is on the structural process of inquiry, action, and reflection. So the word reflections differentiates the challenge-based learning with other pedagogical approach, because the importance of having the reflection to mitigate whether the solution that they provide to the industry will help the industry to solve the issue or the problem that they are facing. And all of these framework, all of these stages in challenge-based learning, the first by presenting a challenge, and then the next phase will be to identify and connect with the challenge, establish and indicators, obtain and organize information through the ends until the reflection and assess for learning will help the students to improve and nurture their critical thinking skills, their creativity, and hands-on problem solving. And we talk about the importance of developing this employability skill that comprise teamwork, communication, and adaptability skills. So we talk about living in the post-normal times where adaptations and adoptions of the current ecosystem, current industrial setting is much more critical. So moving to the next slide, this is the deployment of the CPD trainings of Technica, the continuous professional development training to the teachers. They ensure that the teachers enjoy the lifelong learning processes by having one or two courses in the very beginning, and then when it comes to the implementations, it involves 2 or 3 courses to ensure that the teachers really understand about the concept of new learning in the current 21st century Tibet education. Moving to the next slide is the Tibet governance in Spain. It is interesting to know that they have a standalone Ministry of Vocational Education and Training. Can you move to the, this is the final slide, to the slides of the Tibet governance? The previous slide. Okay. All right, let me continue. So the final slide is on the National Tibet Policy in 2030. So this is our hope. By the next 2030, we will strengthen on these 5 strategy pillars. And we hope that in the in the next 2030, we can provide world-class education, TVET education pathways. And we will also will work on having a comprehensive and synergistic governance across ministries in Malaysia, ensuring that we have sustainable TVET financing, efficient and productive industry collaboration, and finally to make TVET as the preferred career and educational choices for the Malaysian grassroots. So thank you so much for listening. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the TVET division in Malaysia for providing some information, as well as to SKLAD online education platform in Kazakhstan for giving me an opportunity to speak on this international forum on digital technologies and AI in vocational education. Thank you so much. I hand over to the Mr. Chairperson.
Спасибо большое. Я стал уже председателем собрания за это время. У нас есть несколько вопросов, действительно, которые есть после вашей презентации. И первый вопрос – это какие современные механизмы оценки знаний и навыков используете вы? Спасибо.
All right, thank you so much for the questions. It is indeed an interesting questions. In Malaysia, we use like a 30% for theoretical knowledge assessment. And 70% of the evaluations for the competency performance of our students on hands-on or practical skills. So we will evaluate the students' knowledge composition, the theoretical knowledge at only 30%. And we will observe and monitor the students' progress on hands-on practices via formative assessment. Okay, so this is very useful, very important when we talk about having a fair and equal proportions of knowing and assessing whether the students are able to reach a certain competency level. The 70% of the proportion that we set for the evaluations for their so-called academic performance is good enough to measure their skill level. I hope I answered that question.
Спасибо большое. Да, я думаю, да. Есть еще один вопрос. Сейчас, одну секунду. Да, вот вопрос. Как, на ваш взгляд, избежать цифрового элитизма, если так можно выразиться, в профессиональном образовании? Ситуация, при которой передовые технологии доступны только центральным учреждениям, либо каким-то особым учреждениям, а региональные, обычные, если так можно сказать, колледжи, они от этого отстают. Есть ли у Малайзии стратегия цифровой инклюзии в профессионально-техническом образовании?
That is an interesting question. In Malaysia, we have a community college. All of these community colleges are resided in the rural areas, in the suburban areas, where we park the technologies, we park the teaching and learning tools over there. So when we talk about digital divide, I don't think we have that kind of issue because we have stable internet connectivity throughout the nations. And I understand the feelings of the marginalizations of the technology to certain area in a country. So we keep on diversifying on the making sure to get an access and give an access to the learners, TVET learners in the rural area. I would say this is an ongoing effort by the government, first to ensure that all locations in Malaysia will be provided with the good internet access. And I think one of the technologies that is needed is to have stable and fast internet connectivity. And because nowadays students can access everything using the smartphone, and the smartphone will help us to access to digital content. Okay, and I know that the elitism of the technologies has become a debatable issues, but in to harmonize the elites on the technology, the thing that we can do is to have and to prosper more collaborations between the industry and the TVET education providers. We have to have mutual benefits, something that the industry will get, something that the industry will, will enjoy from the investment that they have made. For instance, the TVET graduates will be, posted as a skilled workforce to their industries, and they do not have to provide any more trainings, upskilling and reskilling trainings. If they have invest their technologies, they park their technologies at TVET institutions. So this coming back to the spirits of patriotism, sentiments about the importance of providing some devices and technologies at the TVET institutions. So that is the strategy that we are still keeping up with in terms of how we can give some incentives, rewards for the industry who take part with this initiative.
И, наверное, у нас есть последний вопрос. Это вы сказали, что Малайзия активно использует модели CDIO. Какие шаги были сделаны, чтобы помочь преподавателям перейти от традиционного преподавания к проектно-ориентированному обучению и активным методам? И какова была роль государства в этом переходе в целом?
Thank you for the questions. So when we had a benchmarking visit and learn about the CDIO, we are the representative of the nations, and my current role is on, oversees the training needs of the educators at the higher educations. So when we learn something new from our foreign countries or by our neighboring countries like Singapore on the recent pedagogical approach, we will provide that training in-house. So the government will give us like an annual budget to provide trainings, not only at the higher education level, but also at the education at the school level. So we sort of like a top-down practices where we provide this training, the things that we learn throughout our benchmarking visit from our foreign visits, that we give the training and exercise throughout pilot studies, throughout research, and we learn about the impact of this new pedagogical approach. We learn and experimenting out this pedagogical approach through research activities. And that would be the way on how we measure the impact of this approach. And we report this in a research, we report all of this information in the report that we send to the government.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо большое за ответ. И на данный момент это все вопросы. Большое вам спасибо за то, что были с нами. Спасибо вам за вашу презентацию.
Thank you so much for having me.
Спасибо. Дорогие коллеги, у нас с вами сегодня еще есть один докладчик, это Дэвид Гуральник. президент, генеральный директор Калейдоскоп Learning, и будем говорить о переосмыслении обучения с использованием новых технологий и симуляции обучения через действие. У нас по времени, одну секунду, я вам сейчас покажу. Это будет в 15 часов по Минску, в 5 часов по Астане. То есть у нас с вами небольшой перерыв. У вас есть ссылка, она одна и та же на все время, поэтому ждем вас через, получается, чуть меньше, чем 2 часа. И очень рекомендую вам тоже прийти, присутствовать, потому что я думаю, что будет очень интересно. А на данный момент делаем паузу. Как раз хорошо, уже было 2 сегодня у нас выступления, подумать о них и, может быть, задать свои вопросы сегодняшнему последнему спикеру. Спасибо большое за внимание и до встречи через менее чем 2 часа. Спасибо.
Mixed feelings about numerical scores as ways to evaluate people. They're often necessary for scalability reasons. You'd have a large audience, sometimes you just have to. But sometimes they lack nuance. So for this one, we have scores because they are very realistic scores broken down into areas where you kind of want to have you want to have a real sense of how you're doing. And we could have more where she if you want more nuance and find out what she says about wording, you could click on wording, which we're not showing here, and she could give you her detailed analysis of what you did in terms of wording or tone. But here he did pretty well on wording, quite very well. He did pretty well on tone. Facial expressions were not his strength. You saw that, we said he didn't smile enough at the beginning when he approached the customer. And overall customer satisfaction is pretty good, but not as high as you might think, given that he did other things well. So kind of makes the point that, the customer has an overall reaction to you. And so, if you did everything, but you don't look friendly or happy, even if you did everything right and said the right things, your overall perception might not be so great. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the key elements of this experience. This was experiential learning in a very realistic context. Even more so, I think, in some ways, it was more experiential in a different way, I think, even in the Greece example. It was also learning by doing, so resulting in skill transfer to the job, right? So there's educational research that will certainly tell us, that if you learn something in context, by doing, that's going to help you transfer the skills, right? Learning, it's a lot more successful than simply learning the facts and being able to pass the test about the facts, or even being able to identify the right thing to do in a situation. So here you get to really do it. So, the idea is to be as close as we can in this kind of simulation to the real job and to the reality that he's going to experience as an actual retail person. So the more we simulate that, the more realistic everything is and the better things transfer. Again, there was coaching guidance. So we had the AI coach who was there. She pointed out things he could do better. She was there. If he wanted to ask questions, she could be there. And as the learning experience designers, we could set this up however we wanted. We could set this up so that the learner has to do more on their own without assistance. We could set this up so the coach is really there to, monitor. We could start with the coach monitoring and have her back off a little bit and say, okay, now my student, you're on your own. And all of those are absolutely valid and interesting educational approaches and, have their own places, and they all could work in this kind of environment. Again, there was feedback. So definitely was feedback about how he smiled or didn't smile. Feedback from the coach. This also could be from peers or an instructor if we wanted, right? So we could, again, if we chose, mix this with in-person methods. We could have a cohort of students involved. We could have peers watching. We could have an instructor watching. Pros and cons about all these approaches and practical constraints as well. But those are possibilities. The assessment was realistic and performance-based. This is one of my favorite things about this model. You had an evaluation that wasn't an evaluation about how did you do on an exam, but it was on how did you do on an experience that's very, very, very much like the experience that you will have if you do this job and when you do this job for real. And the criteria on which he's evaluated are exactly those that matter as a person doing that real job. So, I've worked with a lot of retailers in the US, and a lot of the traditional training that they have involves, knowing the rules of customer service, knowing the principles. They sometimes get tested on those. And, that doesn't indicate, that they can do the job, right? So you might do really well on a test about the rules of customer service. And that indicates that you're a good test taker, and it's something. But it's not the same as seeing if you can really do the job. Also, especially in a job like this where there's a lot of emotion potentially involved. Sometimes customers come in and they're upset and they're angry, and sometimes you're in a tense situation, you get upset and angry. So, you can't still capture all of that 100% realistically in a simulated world. But the more we can do, the better. The more this interaction with a customer feels real and authentic and just like working with someone in the real world, the better off we are. And we're getting closer and closer to being able to do that technologically. Again, there's learner control. So we could again make different design decisions. Like we probably want him to encounter certain customers, and the, environment or the coach would probably push him toward that. But in this case, we let him choose, who of the people at the beginning did he want to approach? Because she looked like she needed help. And that's a perfectly reasonable way to do things. But again, the learner was assisted and advised. We had the coach working with him, and that was really, really valuable. As I mentioned, this experience could also form a component of a discussion or other instructor-led activities. So there's, a way that everyone could experience this even on their own and then come together and talk about it if you have time and a cohort of people. And overall, this is a very immersive and personalized experience. So if we move to the next slide, we talk a little bit about where AI fits in. So I've kind of, haven't talked too much about AI yet, but AI is a lot of my own background. My own PhD was very interdisciplinary and was a mix of education, computer science, focusing on AI in education and cognitive science. And so there are AI elements in these experiences. And one is an AI coach interacting realistically, and this could be in audio or text, or it could be in hologram if we wanted, with a learner. I think realistically in the near term would be audio or text. We also can track learner performance in detail and provide some kind of intelligent analysis. So this could be used for adaptive learning purposes. So, if the student is having trouble, particularly with facial expressions, we might, focus on that in the next one. If he's having trouble with being polite, we might give him a customer who, is a little bit more demanding and he really has to work on being polite. We can be as nuanced as we want about that. And so again, these are things that, this isn't a system that we have working this way now. We have elements of these in the work we do at my company, but we're really just, looking ahead to a potential future where these things are more and more possible to do in a realistic way. And this is a model that, we'd like to reach. And it's not just about the technology. It's not just about hooking something up to ChatGPT, but all of this is a more detailed and nuanced approach to the environment that they'd be in and to where the AI components can fit in and, and really be helpful. The AI coach also is really helpful for assessment and reporting. We can be tracking, at a very detailed level what the student is doing well and not doing well. And, there always are a little bit, mixed feelings in my view about that. Like, I think you want people to be able to experiment freely and not feel that they're tracked all the time as well. And so, do we let people have time and play around with this and do what they want, and then they move on to, to an assessment, and that's the part that you're tracked? There are different ways to approach this to balance, I think, the base level of sort of, educational freedom to experiment that I think is so valuable with, with also making sure that, hey, when you're done with an experience, you've learned what at least the key things you need to learn. Some of those are up to you, but there are often things you do need to learn. And this, corporate example, this corporate training example, there are really things you need to learn. Like when you finish this experience, you need to be ready to be a customer service person helping customers. And so there's no way around that. So while we do want to let you experiment and be able to be free to make mistakes and explore things and, follow some things that are of interest, you also have to really be good at this job before you have real customers. Otherwise, it will hurt the company. And that's, a critical part of all this. We also incorporate learner preferences in several ways. So he does have, the ability to approach customers that he wants. There are, he could communicate with the coach in, via text or audio. There are different options that we can give people to help them feel that they're learning things in, in an environment that's set up to be comfortable for them. All right, so let's kind of take a step back. Let's move to the next slide. And on the next slide, one of the things that I do in a lot of the courses that I teach, as I mentioned, at Columbia University here in New York, and do kind of just a lot of different seminars and things for different groups at conferences or particularly for clients and all that kind of thing. And one of the questions that I ask people often is, what's the best learning experience you've ever had in your life, anywhere? Whether it's at school, it's at work, or none of the above. What's the best experience? So here are 3 answers. These are actually not the real people who answered these questions, but they are, they look kind of like the real people, honestly. The woman on the left says, my best learning experience ever was when my sister taught me how to drive a car. So in this, she worked with her sister. They sat together, and her sister was the one who was her coach and mentor. Person in the middle says, her greatest experience was another personal one. She learned to crochet from her aunt. And the guy on the right, who's clearly connected socially all the time, his most meaningful learning experience was from childhood. He had a great soccer team and a great soccer coach, and he really liked his teammates and his coach. These are just examples that came up. When I ask this question, it's always striking to me that very few of the answers that we get are from formal education, from classes, from university work or, high school or anything. And almost never are the answers from their professional development or corporate training. Like very rarely do we hear anything that says my best learning experience was in a formal education environment. It's almost always something that is from something else, something that's more personal, something that involved, an emotional level that made them really happy, something that they had a lot more personalized attention, something where they got to do things. And so all of those are relevant and interesting things to think about as we look at how can we best use technology to create learning experiences that are really going to have the effects that we want. All right, so if we move on to the next slide, we can talk about, kind of go back in time. So, we go way back in time. Apprenticeships have been the educational model, for, centuries. And so way back, people learned by being an apprentice. If you wanted to learn how to be a blacksmith, you would apprentice to a master blacksmith, a master craftsman. And you would start by doing things like you would clean, okay? You would clean up the ashes. That was your job. And you would watch. And then you'd maybe get to do a little more, and you could, hold something in, in the fire, and then you could do a little bit more and become more and more of a craftsman. And you would work with the expert. And you would have this one-on-one relationship, and you would learn by doing, and you would gradually improve and gradually take on more and more, which is a really, really useful model. And, it had a lot of advantages. So as I said, it was learn by doing. So if we go to the next slide, people would learn by practicing. You had a coach, okay? You had an experienced mentor working with you and paying attention to you. The learning process was personalized for the apprentice. Okay, so again, you weren't in a large class. You were just there one-on-one. This was, completely personalized. Apprenticeships also weren't just a one-time event. So you didn't just go and, take a class and then move on. You established this relationship over time. And often this was something you would do, even when you were done with the apprenticeship period, you might work, with the master. They could take on somebody else as a worker. This is a really, really good model. So if we move to the next slide, why don't we see more apprenticeships today? And, experts are simply too expensive and in too short supply. So when there was a need for mass education and mass training, it's just kind of impossible. there aren't enough experts. They don't have time. Lots of them don't have time to play this role. I mean, they just don't. Um, their job is doing the job. There are just way too many people. So it's a very time-consuming model for the experts. So the short version is, this is a great model, but it doesn't scale up. With technology and with AI, we're able to create great learning experiences at scale. And that really is, overall the goal of a lot of my own work and the things that I'm talking about here today is to create great learning experiences that work at a large scale. And so that's why so much is self-paced, and it's great when there's a role for an instructor as well. And it's great when we can have people work with peers as well. Sometimes it's not possible. We want to create these really, really, interesting and personalized learning environments where people learn by doing and try things out and feel as if they are respected and treated as a thoughtful human being, getting to try things out and fostering a love of learning. And we can do a lot of this with the right uses of technology. Always need the human touch when we can, but we can do a lot of things with the right uses of technology. All right, so on the next slide, as we already are, so we're going to talk about learn by doing simulations. I've shown you an example really in the customer service example was really a learn by doing simulations. Learners are put in realistic situations and they're asked to take action to make, generally non-trivial decisions. And that's what we saw with our customer service person. He had to decide what to say to this customer. She's asking questions. How do I handle this? It wasn't always obvious. There's some key features of a well-designed simulation. One is coaching guidance. So I've talked a little bit about that already, more than a little. So you have a coach who's there guiding you through things, watching what you're doing in some form, helping you out, maybe intervening when needed, making suggestions, all of those kinds of things. There's also feedback from the environment, from a coaching component, from peers. So all of those things. So there's, feedback is critical. It's not, this is one of the advantages of a simulation rather than a full real life experience. So in most cases, to me, simulations are trying to sort of approximate the experience you get from real life. Like there's a saying, there's nothing like learning from experience. And you are learning from experience, but you can imagine an ideal world where you learn from experience and the consequences aren't real, right? And that's what we're trying to do in a simulation, right? So you learn by doing, but if you say the wrong thing to the customer, well, the girl that we saw who didn't think he smiled enough, she's not real. She's not going to fail to make a purchase at our store and then tell her friends that the customer service is bad at our store and they shouldn't come back. We're not going to lose any business because of the girl in the simulation. So it's an opportunity for somebody, in this case, our student in the example that you saw, to try things out and to experiment and to make mistakes. And even if he's trying his best and not experimenting, if things don't go well, to learn. And so that by the time he does the job, he's really ready to do the job. And he's able to get feedback there. But one of the nice things about the simulated environment is that there is an opportunity for coaching and feedback, and also an opportunity for the structure of the learning experience, whether it's the environment or the coach or both, to push and drive the learner to encounter things that are important. Like, if you're really on the job, you might not see a really angry customer until all of a sudden you have a really major situation on your hands. So here we can force you to encounter an angry customer. Okay, we control the learning environment, the designers or the coach or however we set it up. So you can experience things that you need to experience in a safer way, and that's a lot of the goal of the safe simulated environment that we have. We also get performance-based evaluation, and I think that I talked about that a little bit before. So assessments aren't based on what questions do you answer. The assessment and your evaluation is based on how well did you perform, and how well did you perform a job that's very, very similar to the job that you'll be doing in real life. So a lot of keys to learning by doing, and the safe simulated environment is a core component of that. So if we move on to the next slide, I want to show you another example. This is an early learn by doing simulation. This is something for Boston Chicken, which is a sort of a fast casual restaurant chain in the US. They became Boston Market, and then they're kind of, I think, finally not around anymore, or at least about to be. They've had a rough time in these years. This was years ago. This is a simulation that was built in 1991, and was something I did that was considered the first learn by doing simulation for corporate training that that had been created. And so this is to teach people to be cashiers at a Boston Chicken restaurant. So we're on we're on the cashier training slide already. So the audience was new cashiers at Boston Chicken, and the goals were for people to become fast and accurate at ringing up customer orders. So the goals were clear and simple, right? What are, to be a good cashier, you have to be fast and accurate. There's some other things. You have to be friendly and all of that too. This focused on really learning how to use the cash register to ring up orders quickly and accurately. They have a specialized cash register, as I think pretty much everybody does these days, and even those days. And, you would think it would be fairly straightforward to use the cash register, but it's not. To really be good at it is not that easy. It's harder than you think, and we'll see how in a second. So let's go ahead to the next screen. You're there now. So this is the screen that you see. The right-hand side of this screen is what the cash register looks like and looked like at the time to a Boston Chicken employee. So they had a touchscreen cash register that was the right side of the screen. Those buttons, indiv, reg, large, all those buttons are things that they would press. So a customer would come up with an order. The left-hand side is all part of the educational learning environment. Okay. So on the top, you see there are performance meters that tell you how you're doing. We'll talk more about in a bit. You also have some other things you can say to the customer, tell the customer the amount due, other things. What we see now is a customer, she's already come up to me, and you see her with her tray, and she tells me what she has, and I can see what she has. And for ease of use, for the, focus on the ringing up part, we reinforce that. So the system does remind you what her order was. So that's up at the top under the logo. It's a half chicken with tortellini salad and fruit salad, an extra cornbread, and a small Diet Coke, and it's for dining in. So those are the things you need to know. So this is your first one. You gotta, you get told what you need to know. At the bottom, you also see some buttons. There are questions you can ask, which are now what, how, and why. All right, so if I go ahead and ask now what, so click the next slide, you'll see me clicking now what. And then if you go to the next slide again, it tells me what to do. So the next slide says you need to ring up the customer's order. Okay, well, that's probably the right thing to do. I am a cashier. But how do I do that? So how do I do that? Next slide says you click the half with sides key, which is flashing now. So on this one, it flashes. You guys aren't going to quite see that, but it would be flashing on the next screen. So yeah, I'm not going to ask you to, when I do that, I'll flip back and forth between the slides, so we don't have to do that. So it's flashing now. And then if we go to the, I might also ask why. So if we go to the next slide, we click why. And then again to the next slide again to see the answer to why, which is, well, that's the most efficient way to ring up a half chicken with tortellini salad and fruit salad. Those are the sides. Because there is actually a key that says half chicken. It says half chicken only. But so, why do I have to click half with sides rather than half chicken and a tortellini salad button and a fruit salad button? They all have their own buttons. So these are the kinds of questions that you might have as someone doing this job. So, all right, I get it. I should do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. So you go to the next slide. We just jump ahead. I've rung up the order. I've clicked the half with sides key now, and it says, here's what's due so far. Prices were good back in 1991. I haven't rung up the cornbread or the Diet Coke yet, but you see what happens. The cash register really reacts to what I do in a realistic way in the simulation. So if I click half with sides, I get that on my screen. So that's what this looks like. We can go ahead and go to the next slide and talk about what made this work. So key elements of this experience. This was a true learn by doing simulation, right? It had guidance and feedback. You saw, there was a coaching component. It wasn't a person in the way that the AI tutor was in the examples I showed at the beginning, but it was, through text. It wasn't actually, technically a chatbot, but it had a chatbot feel. These were the days before chatbots were the way they are now. But this was also a very carefully tailored chatbot. So it was going to only say the things, it wasn't open-ended the way that the, ChatGPT and LLMs are today, but also was not ever going to be wrong. So it knew the context that you were in, it followed rules and followed context, and it answered the question you were asking at the time you needed it asked. So the success of this was a combination of the design of the environment and the design of the tutor. The performance meters that we saw, there was speed and accuracy. And those added a game-like feel that maintained the realism of the task and provided a challenge. So the really nice thing about these meters was that they were really, really fun for people. Like, people found them to be interesting and challenging. And they would say, hey, I really liked that. It was like a game. But it was a game that was realistic. Like, if you're good at ringing up orders, you're good at being fast and accurate. Those are the things you have to be good at. So they were realistic, actual performance measures of your performance. So you're getting performance feedback in real time in a way that was really fun and challenging and motivated you to say, like, hey, wait a minute, I only got, I'm not fully as efficient as I can be. I'm going to do a little better on the next one. And there were actually 50 different customers at some point you could face in this thing. Not necessarily all one after the other would be a little bit tiring, but and again, so was the job, I think. So the challenge of this aspect of this game was very, very effective. The guidance and feedback components used AI techniques, and as I was mentioning, that they were based on rules and data, and it was really this chatbot feel that would help people get through it. All right, so let's move to the next slide and talk a little bit more about learn by doing simulations and just some things points I want to make. One is that realism is just key. And everything from language to the characters and situations. You want the world that you create to feel realistic. And one of the sort of design challenges is, you can't always build everything. It's just can be too much. So you can structure things so that the experience feels real, but you don't really build everything, right? Like, we didn't build a real cash register. The student could only go through the certain paths that they were supposed to go through. So if they clicked a crazy button that had nothing to do with a half chicken at all, the tutor would interrupt and say, hey, that's not the right thing. If you clicked a half chicken button that looked reasonable, it would work in the cash register, and then the tutor would help you figure out how to get out of that because it was the wrong thing. So how do I undo it? So there were careful design decisions made about what learners could do so that everything felt realistic and that they encountered the situations they would need to in real life, but the effort was used wisely. So we didn't, have to necessarily build a full-fledged cash register. There's a wide variety of simulation approaches, okay? So there are just, lots of different approaches, including more reactive scripted models and more open-ended ones. So we've seen mostly things that are a little bit more scripted. The Boston Chicken, you have a particular customer that you have to handle. In between was the example of customer service that I showed, where, he once he got into the conversation, he kind of had to react to the customer, but he had a choice before. He was a little bit more open-ended in, who am I going to help? And the Grease model, which was less, fully learn by, you weren't learning by doing quite as much. You're exploring more than, actively doing. But that one was much more open-ended. So we've seen kind of examples of things across the range of what learn by doing can be. If we move on to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about one more thing, particularly related to vocational training, which I know is a relevant theme for this conference. The Rise Up program is something that exists in the US. It's available worldwide. It's vocational training for retail. It's for people who are interested in a career in retail. And so this is just one screen from one of the many courses. And this is a course that's from the National Retail Federation. So if we go to the next slide, it's from the National Retail Federation Foundation. So the National Retail Federation, or NRF, is a large organization that works with all the major retailers. And the foundation is their nonprofit arm, which then sponsors and funds this project. And we at Kaleidoscope Learning have created these courses in partnership with the NRF Foundation. And the program is a training and credentialing program. So this is the language that NRF uses, that provides foundational employability skills to help people land jobs and get promoted in retail and beyond. All right, so basically the audience is people who are interested in a career in retail, and they're mostly Many of them are high school students who are on a more vocational track. They're people at community colleges. They're people in workforce development programs. So if we go to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit more about it. Courses and exams cover customer service, sales, and other topics, and the students earn a credential whenever they pass an exam. And as I mentioned, the audience includes high school students, community colleges, and others. So I think maybe we'll go one more slide. I think I'm maybe ahead of you on the slides. So it's high school students, community college students, people in workforce development programs, and others as well. All right. The courses are, if we go to the next slide, the courses are available in both classroom textbook and online format. So there is, they're taught in high schools as a class. So there's a lot of media that is used in the class. They see scenarios and simulations, and they also do some group activities. The online versions also include a lot of simulations as part of it. And a lot of the overall design was to have sort of two parallel versions because, some of the schools, to get credit, you have to have a class. So they have a more traditional class. And these follow an active approach to learning with a variety of mini simulations and other activities in both of the formats, classroom and otherwise. So if you're interested in more about this, there's more on the NRF Foundation's website. So that's for more information on these courses, which I've really enjoyed doing. So let's kind of take a step back again, move to the next slide. I want to talk about a couple more things before then I'll have some time for questions. I want to tell you a quick story about design. Design that I've mentioned a few times, and a lot of people think of design as being the look of something, but it's really a lot more than that. The item on the left is a early MP3 player, and this is from around 2002 by a company called iRiver. It was a nice little device. It was something that I used, an early adopter, and I used. It was good for going out running. It was the first MP3 player that I ever had. It was one of the first that was on the market. It was a really interesting piece of technology. You could put files on it and listen to them. But the whole process of using it was complicated and difficult. Okay, to do it, you would download files from somewhere, which usually, if you were going to really download them, would actually be somewhere probably illegal. I actually did not do that, and I'm not just saying that because I'm being recorded, but I did not do that. I had CDs, because this was the time we all had CDs, and I would rip the CDs into MP3s and listen to the music that I had, which was legal. And then you would have to hook this up to your computer, and you would copy the files. You would first name the files something that would be meaningful, so you would know what the name of the song was, probably copy the files to this, which functioned as an external hard drive. You had this tiny little screen, basically you could just listen to what you had. It was still pretty cool and useful. But then later that same year, Apple came out with the item on the right, which was the first iPod, right? So it's hard to remember that there was ever music on an Apple device without an iPhone, but there was. And this had a lot more features, certainly, but the key was really the way you did things. You would buy music on Apple's website using their iTunes program. You would download the files that you wanted. You would plug this little device into your computer, and then you didn't have to copy files. It just automatically synced. And then you could put together, on your computer, you could put together playlists. They'd all get copied. So this was just a much better experience. It also is a really nice piece of technology, but this was successful and was a big seller because of the way it was designed. The entire experience was designed. Technologically, there were a lot of things in common, but in terms of how you used it, it was just much simpler to use and much more intuitive to use. And so that's, when I talk about design, I'm thinking about the overall design of the experience and the process. And so just want to kind of make that point before we move on. Next phase, and kind of the last sort of segment of this talk, if we go to the next slide, is about new technologies. So every time there's a new technology, there are new ways we can interact with it. We had radio, which was sound. We had television where you had picture. And when you had picture, you wanted to do different things. Like maybe, at first, I think it's easy to say, hey, we're going to take radio programs and, put some pictures with them. But then you get into more innovative uses of what you can do with television and what you can do with images, what you can do with video. We had the VCR where you could time shift and place shift, right? So I could record something, watch it when I wanted, and watch it potentially where I wanted. I might tape a show and bring it to a friend's house and watch it on their VCR. This was really new and interesting at the time. each time there's a new technology, there are new things we can do with it. Okay, so it's not just take the same models and copy them, right? And we do see a little bit too much of that still in education. We see here's a class, here's an online class now, but it's the same. And it's, sometimes that's helpful, but that's not all there is. Different video game controllers give us new ways of interacting. Laptops, home PCs, the mouse, smartphones, tablets, on. Every time there's something new, there's a new way to interact with it. If we move to the next slide and we go on to the world that we're in now, we have more options. Virtual reality is potentially great for simulations. Put people in a real virtual world with the guidance and feedback that I'm talking about. You can do all sorts of interesting things. On the next slide, we have augmented reality. You take the world and you can see something more than the world. So here's a version of Google Maps where you're somewhere and it sees where you are and points out things that you're interested in. Okay, things that you want to know. Where's the nearest train? Where's the hotel? Where's the nearest restaurant? All these things. Holograms on the next slide are really interesting. More and more becoming practical, not quite fully there yet, but in certain situations they are. 3D images, and 3D images maybe we can start manipulating as we're getting closer to that as well. So that's closer and closer to the Greece and customer service examples that I showed. So I think a lot of the techniques that I showed are certainly possible today and useful, but the one thing that's particularly not there yet, I think, is the fully immersive world of holograms that we can get to. AI, we've talked about in some different ways. On the next slide is AI, and we've talked about that in a few different ways as a tutoring component, as a coach, as a way to guide you, as a way to facilitate adaptive learning and put you in really, really interesting situations. And there are more. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see sort of some more, just more things, smartwatches, more mobile devices, 5G networks are more, widespread than ever before. So people have access to faster networks more easily. Bendable and foldable devices, which are slower to get there than I think I thought they would be, but I do have a foldable phone that I really, really like. Some kinds of headsets that this thing on the right is something that interprets your emotion through your brain waves, and there are some questions about how I feel about whether we want that, but you could imagine something that would sense if you're getting angry that would be useful in an educational context if we were willing to give up that information. All right, a couple more slides. So the next slide, let's just the future of learning. What are some key themes to kind of get to wrap up? So one is technology that feels warm and personal. So much about technology still feels cold. We have learning management systems that sometimes just feel like they're a burden to use, that the technology controls the way that you do things and that you're trying to figure out how the system works. And instead, I want to create learning experiences that are warm and personal, and even the AI coach feels not doesn't try to be a person, because that no one's getting fooled, but has elements of humanity, and by giving learners control, it also helps things feel warm and personal. AI and new technologies can be used to help people learn in active, engaging, meaningful ways. We can leverage technology to maximize the role of professors, teachers, instructors as coaches and mentors. So ideally, we shift more and more, to what's, a model similar to what's often called the flipped classroom approach, like less lecturing and more mentoring and coaching. Because you can put people in experiences that they couldn't get any other way. So you go and you explore ancient Greece, and then you have a conversation about it, led by a professor who absolutely is great at orchestrating the discussion and knows the content really well. All of these are models that can work in the future. On the next slide, simulations in particular, active learn by doing helps people learn skills in context. So they're not simply learning information, but they're learning skills. They can learn to do things. And AI and new technologies can help us build better, more immersive, more realistic simulations with advanced guidance and feedback. Well-designed technologies and simulations facilitate transfer to the actual job. So if you're good at customer service simulation, you should be good at working with actual customers, and it can truly prepare people for their work. We're seeing a lot of that in the US as something that's a big issue is, how do we make sure there's a connection between some of the things people learn and, and some of the work. Okay. Finally, a couple final points on new technologies and learning on the next slide. We can use AI to help create more humanizing experiences. if we design the right types of experiences, especially including simulations and other active learning. And AI and new technologies can help us create individualized, engaging, relevant, respectful learning experiences that are scalable. So one thing I talk maybe as much about as I sometimes do with the examples is they're not talking down to the students, right? The idea isn't the coach is the expert and you are nobody and you're just going to learn. The idea is you have agency. You are somebody who has thoughts and feelings, and you're an intelligent person who's exploring and experimenting, and you have somebody who's going to help you. There's a lot you have to learn, but you're not talked down to. You're not simply put somewhere and said, here's what you have to know. I know everything, you know nothing. It's a very different perspective and puts people in a much better situation to facilitate and foster their love of learning, to make them feel as if they have a lot to contribute, because they do, to put them in a position to experiment, to put them in a position to really learn how to do things and can start to contribute to society. So all of this to me connects. This is a very humanistic approach overall. So I'm going to close with the final slide, which is a quote from Isaac Asimov from 1983. Isaac Asimov is a famous science fiction writer and famous thinker in the US. And in 1983, he wrote something for a Canadian newspaper, and he said, education, which must be revolutionized in the world, will be revolutionized by the computer. And there'll be an opportunity, finally, for every youngster, every person, to learn what they want to learn, their own time, their own speed, in their own way. And education will become fun because it will bubble up from within and not be forced in from without. And I think that captures the ethos and the feeling of my own views on what education can be, and with technologies that go far beyond the computers that Asimov was envisioning, even in 83 when he made this comment, and we had at the time. And that's how I see AI and new technologies giving us a way to really transform education. And so with that, there's some time for questions. So thank you very much. We can go to the final slide, which has thank you and some contact information as well. A couple other things. If you're interested in more, I have a book out in English at Amazon, if you can get to that. And there's an online version of that as well. There's a downloadable version. And then there's a conference that I run coming up in May and June as a hybrid event, and that's called the Learning Ideas Conference, where people talk a lot more about these kinds of ideas. It's focused on new ideas in learning and technology. And so with that, thank you once again for your time. There's a little bit of time for questions if we want, so thank you again.
Спасибо большое. Действительно, есть о чем подумать, и есть вопросы, конечно же. Елена спрашивает, какой самый ценный опыт обучения получили именно вы?
Oh, no, thank you. It's a great question. Actually, I have a story that I'll try to tell the short version. I have a story that I tell sometimes in some versions of this talk. When I was in 5th grade, I was about 10 years old, I was at an elementary school that was very progressive. It was very project-based. It was really kind of embodied all of the philosophy that I try to incorporate in my work today. And we had to learn about US state governments. And traditionally, you would learn that by reading the facts of, reading a chapter about, how government works. We didn't do that. We were asked to pick a state that we were interested in. And I chose the state of Pennsylvania because I was born there and lived there for 1 year. Didn't know much about it. So it was meaningful to me. And create a scrapbook that sort of explains key elements of how the government works. And so the goal was, a very constructivist goal, build this scrapbook. And to do that, we were encouraged to write letters and call. As before the internet, right? This is back in the 1970s. Found contacts at the state government. So we'd write letters, they would send things back. Here's information about the governor's office and the mayor's office of the state capital. And we would gather this information, and everybody in the class, it was a small class, had their own state, and we would also work together a lot. So it was very collaborative. Like you would find, hey, I found out that there's something called the Chamber of Commerce. If I write to them, they sent me some good stuff. My friend was like, oh, I'm going to do that. So this whole experience was, this mix of personalized and collaborative. And then the teachers structure was really much more as a coach. So it wasn't just lecturing to us or at us, but she worked with us individually, and she was very, very good at, letting us drive the process as much as we could. She was there with suggestions. Hey, have you thought about this? Or here's something you didn't know about. We know everything. We were 10. But that to me was a really memorable experience, and I think encapsulated a lot of the features that I talked about. So thanks for asking that, because I enjoyed talking about that.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо. Есть у нас еще, я знаю, что меньше 5 минут на вопросы. Есть еще один вопрос про персонализацию обучения. Многие из ваших примеров предполагают высокую степень персонализации обучения, но как можно масштабировать такие решения, не потеряв управляемость процесса, не перегрузив преподавателей необходимостью постоянного анализа данных? Вот так.
No, that's a really good question. I think that's a question that's, I don't know that there's a fully easy answer to that yet. I feel like that's a lot that's sort of still in process. I do think there are certain things that, we'll have to make some decisions. Everyone will have to make some decisions about where, do the teachers, how much do the teachers necessarily have to review? Like some of the examples I was giving were used on their own where there is no teacher. So this is, putting someone in a position where they're going to just be able to encounter the scenarios that are best for them, and, and it's personalized and so in that sense. I think it's still, it's a challenge as we move forward. I think one thing that can help is if the teachers, don't have to spend time lecturing, because people can start to be more immersed in some of the other experiences, that then they can focus more on the individual students. I think there are still, if you have a class of 30 or 60 or 100 students, there are certain limitations. So I wish I had an easy answer to that. I think it's something that's going to evolve over time in terms of, what is the, if there's a class, you want the teacher to be able to be in significant control, but then where's the technology going to be, where's the right level where for the technology to be helpful? So my answer is really sort of an open-ended one, but I think it's still, in self-paced environments, absolutely, sort of unequivocally the way to go. And then in mixed environments where there is an instructor, there's, a lot it can do to help. And then finding the balance is absolutely a challenge. And I think that's something that might evolve over time, and might even be a place where, some of the LLMs, the AI that we're seeing now can even help there too, in terms of just helping you as the teacher figure out what's most important. And we always have challenges when there's a lot of data, to not drown in it, and to not, we could spend hours looking at data. I could spend hours looking at data on, some of the courses that we produce when we have it. And, where's the line? And it's a great question. And I think it's just something that's kind of got to get continued to be explored and evaluated as we go.
Спасибо большое за ответ. И у нас последний вопрос на сегодня. Это Ольга Жук. Спасибо за интересную презентацию. Вопрос: за счет каких механизмов при использовании искусственного интеллекта обеспечивается прочность и устойчивость сформированности компетенций обучающихся?
That's a good question. I mean, the examples that I showed, so the one that was a real example was the Boston Chicken one that was, really done, as opposed to Future Vision. So in that, the AI was used, and it was, it was done 30 years ago or more. That was used, we used AI as part of the learning experience, but all the work was done, was really done, to understand the content was done manually. So there was no, there were no LLMs then, and nothing to really assist with that. From today's standpoint, I think my view of where AI helps in the process is also being explored more and more. There are absolutely advantages to using AI to help you through the sort of, help determine and understand a body of content. And I think there are uses for that. And our teams here sometimes will do that as well. But also when they're collecting content, analyzing it, and understanding the core competencies that someone needs to be able to do, especially from a performance standpoint, There are a lot of interviews with subject matter experts. There's, trying to explore real situations, watch people on a job in an employee setting, and all that. And I think that still remains as a key part of the process. I think there's probably a lot more of a potential future role for AI to kind of help assist with things and help assist in analyzing. And again, I think to us that's still, continuing to evolve. But there are also a lot of things that have really helped. We still interview subject matter experts, and you don't just get content from that, you get voice and stories and real examples and a feel for what the audience is. And we talk to the target audience too and understand what challenges they face. So, I think it's a mix. And I think that, I know in terms of the work that my company does, are still, exploring AI in different ways to help through that part of the process. And as far as the actual product, we haven't yet produced anything with the LLM model. What we've done is more along the lines of the sort of, symbolic AI that's a little more fixed that, I showed in the Boston Chicken example. So hopefully that got to most of the things of the question. But when we're looking at competencies, we're looking particularly at skills and application in the sort of, corporate and vocational environments that we're in.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо большое, Дэвид, за ваше время. И было действительно очень интересно послушать. Спасибо всем за ваши вопросы. Спасибо вам. Будем рады вас видеть, если у вас будет время завтра и в понедельник еще у нас будет продолжаться наша стажировка. Спасибо вам.
Absolutely. I'll join as much as I can. It's a really interesting event, and thanks again for having me.
Спасибо большое. Ну, а мы с вами переходим дальше. У нас с вами сегодня было 3 докладчика. Давайте вспомним, что у нас было. Про эволюцию финской системы профобразования, было про систему типа в Малайзии, и сейчас господин Гуралник рассказывал нам про переосмысление обучения с использованием новых технологий и симуляции обучения через действие. Надеюсь, что вам понравился сегодняшний день, он был довольно насыщенным. Завтра у нас с вами мы встречаемся в 13 часов по Минску, в 15 часов по Астане. И начнем с Италии. У нас будет Мауро Пелуки, который будет говорить про искусственный интеллект в глобальной занятости. Это будет очень интересно, потому что я думаю, что всех из нас, в том числе людей, которые работают в профессиональном образовании, интересует именно какие сейчас специальности появляются в мире по искусственному интеллекту, потому что в каких-то странах они появляются раньше, в каких-то позже, и интересно будет узнать, к чему нам готовиться в будущем. Далее будет у нас Томас Дайсингер из Германии, будет рассказывать про гибридность, перспективы повышения ценности и осознанности профобразования в контексте цифровизации и академизации. И тоже это очень будет интересно, потому что гибридизация – это именно то, о чем мы говорим, когда говорим о смеси человека и искусственного интеллекта. И далее будет Риэль Миллер из Канады, будет рассказывать про экосистемы знания и власти, как рождаются новые формы обучения в цифровую эпоху. Поэтому будет замечательно. Завтра у нас с вами пятница. Ждем всех вас завтра в 13 по Минску, 15 часов по Астане. Будем рады всех вас видеть. Если вы... Извините. Извините, пожалуйста. Если вы еще не подписались на наш телеграм-канал, где тоже есть много всего интересного про нейросети в образовании, про искусственный интеллект и анонсы каких-то будущих событий, то, пожалуйста, подписывайтесь, будем рады вас видеть. Я с вами прощаюсь, желаю вам хорошего остатка дня и всего самого наилучшего. До свидания.